All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chair Parks, Budget Committee Commissioners. We're pleased to be here today on behalf of our Business and Community Services Department for the county. My name is Sarah Eckman. I'm the Interim Director, and with me is Allegra Wilhite, our Deputy Director. I'd like to take a moment also to introduce our leadership team and staff who are on the Zoom call and present to assist today as needed. We have Tracy Grambush, our Financial Analyst, Catherine Cole, Library Network Services Manager, Lori Bothwell, County Fair and Event Center Director, Mike Turley and Gordon Tolbert with Stone Creek Golf Club, Total Golf Management Services, Mitzi Olson, Library Director of Oak Lodge and Gladstone Libraries, and Tom Riggs, our Parks and Forestry Manager. I'd also like to thank our Finance and Administrative team, who is in BCS, who've all dedicated considerable time to bring forward the budget that we're presenting to you today. The mission of BCS is to provide essential economic development, public spaces, and community enrichment services to residents, businesses, visitors, and partners so they can thrive and invest in a healthy, vibrant, and prosperous Clackamas County, both now and into the future. BCS includes 6 lines of business. We're a complex department. We have BCS Administration, the County Fair and Event Center, Economic Development, Libraries, which includes both library support services and the Oak Lodge and Gladstone Libraries, Parks, Golf and Recreation, and Assets, which includes forestry and property disposition. In addition, we currently include 2 special districts, the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and the Library District, both of which had their presentations yesterday. So this presentation will focus on the budget for the first 6 lines of business that I mentioned that are not special districts. Our total budget for BCS is $39,710,016. This includes 42.5 FTE. As I mentioned, we're a large and diverse department, so we have a lot of information for you at a very high level to meet the time requirements of our presentation today. However, we will make sure to leave time for questions you may have. Let's see. All right, we're already there. Great. So over the past year, BCS provided services to the community during considerable time of difficulty. As you know, we've not only dealt with COVID-19, but also wildfires and the ice storm. Throughout the year, we've prioritized bringing services to the community when they needed them the most. And many of our accomplishments listed in our presentation today are directly tied to providing services during the difficult times we've had. In the interest of time, I'll highlight just a few examples of our 2020 accomplishments. Beginning shortly after the pandemic started, our economic development team created a COVID-19 small business support package to provide help to our local small businesses. We did this in coordination and in cooperation with many other county departments through our Emergency Operations Center structure. We distributed more than $5 million in grants. We published a Who's Open application, which is a mapping application. We provided one-stop support and guidance for businesses, distributed personal protective equipment, and opened 6 business recovery centers throughout the county that offer services in multiple language, and depending on client needs, provide individual answers to business questions, assistance with connecting to a variety of resources, and other services. We just heard yesterday that we've received a NACO award actually for this small business support package, so we're very proud of the work we've done there. Libraries also rose to the challenge by identifying ways to best meet the needs of patrons during this global event. Library Support Services, which provides integrated services and shared operational support for county libraries, implemented a new online library card application service to enable residents while in-person services were shut down. The Library of Things collection, which was introduced last year, allows residents to check out items ranging from baking pans to sewing machines, and also won a NACO Achievement Award in 2020. The 2 county-operated libraries, Oak Lodge and Gladstone, worked hard to minimize disruption to services as much as possible. Staff provided services through the year by mail, holds pickup, phone, email services, and more. Another important accomplishment was the work of staff and community task force participants to finalize master plans for the 2 new libraries. The master plans were approved by the board in January, and the project is now in the schematic design phase. As many of you know, the Oak Lodge and Gladstone Community Project, a joint property with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, will build a new Gladstone Library building and at the Concord School property, a new Oak Lodge library. This project also includes a new community center and park. The two libraries will be operated under a one library, two building approach in order to maximize efficiencies and deliver consistent services. We're very excited about this project, and it continues to be a top priority for BCS. We do anticipate construction will begin in spring of 2022. Next slide, please. County parks, as many outdoor recreation spots can relate to, had a very challenging year. The parks were closed for 10 weeks during the pandemic, and we had to cancel many reservations. Reservation revenue was therefore severely impacted, and in response, parks cut staffing levels. Even without the ability to make reservations, many community members were flocking to parks, meaning the remaining staff were still needed to do the required cleaning, maintenance, and other services to respond to increased visitor demand. Parks made it through this difficult time in part due to reserves set aside for challenging times such as this. They continued important work on capital projects and maintenance this year by leveraging grants and moved forward with the adoption of the Barton Park Master Plan. Forestry completed a harvest last year, resulting in net profit of $1 million that helped fund the forestry program and parks capital and maintenance projects. Stone Creek Golf Club, although closed during the initial weeks of the pandemic, rebounded with an increase in golfing rounds higher than in prior years. To better meet customer needs, Stone Creek created a new app to book and pay online for tee times. Last but not least, our property disposition division held an auction in January of 2021. This was done in a safe and successful manner with the assistance of our partners in the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. All properties from the auction were either sold at auction or after through our property disposition process. I apologize too, we had an oversight in getting this one particular item on our accomplishment slide. Next slide. On the Performance Clackamas strategic results slide, we've included a selection of performance measures, and you will see that they tell a story of perseverance through the adversity of this past year. Although we were unable to hold the typical county fair and rodeo event this year, the introduction of brand new events such as the Scare Fair and Winter Fair meant that the fairgrounds were still fully utilized throughout the year. Library material circulation is down from prior years due to COVID-19 restrictions on in-person services. However, I'm pleased to report that our libraries have adapted throughout this year and continued to provide no-contact hold services, resulting in a very respectable 55% of materials circulated throughout the year. Next slide, please. Thank you. Moving on to this slide, you can see examples of divisions continuing to meet or exceed goals even during the difficult year. As an example, we have forestry. Projected performance from timber sales was estimated at $280,000. Due to carry forward dollars from the 1920 timber sale, forestry was already set to exceed that goal. Then came the wildfires, which burned 473 acres of county forest land. Staff responded quickly to adapt to the new situation and completed a salvage timber harvest that is anticipated to add another $145,000 to this year's proceeds. In addition to our departmental performance measures, BCS is also the lead for 3 of the board's strategic results, including businesses reporting a business-friendly environment, an increase in jobs meeting the self-sufficiency standard wage, and an increase in food production and food production acres from agricultural land in the county. We'll be working on these measures throughout the coming year. Next slide, please. The program profile slide provides a high-level overview of the programs within our department. The budgets range from $1.1 million to $7.4 million. Only library support services and county parks receive general fund dollars. You can see that over half the programs have 100% restricted funds, and all programs except for one have at least some restricted funds. This is due to intergovernmental agreements, statute, or other restrictions that mean the dollars can only be spent for that specific program or purpose. BCS programs also have specific state, federal, county, or IGA mandates that govern their operations. For example, our economic development program is mandated under Oregon law, and funds are distributed to the county in a dedicated fund set aside for purposes that further economic development. Most programs are operated by the county. Exceptions include the County Fair and Event Center, their staff hired and managed by the County Fair Board, and Stone Creek Golf Club, staffed by a contracted agency, Total Golf Management Services, run by Gordon Tolbert, who manages the course. In the last column, we have a very high-level roll-up of performance metrics for each program. For metrics reporting on this slide, we chose to report on 1920 measures because that was our last full year of available data. You can see that the percentage that meet, exceeded, or improved goals is lower than we would like, primarily due to COVID-19 impacts. In this current fiscal year and next year, we expect to see great improvement on these trends. Next slide, please. These graphs show a rolled up view of all BCS divisions in aggregate. One item that may stand out on the revenue chart is the $16.5 million in beginning fund balance, which accounts for 41.5% of revenue. The reason for this large fund balance is directly tied to our BCS financial policies that have been in place for several years. These policies exist to ensure consistent provision of services, even in times of difficulty such as this past year. Because we are so reliant on fees and charges, the department developed these guidelines to get the department through challenging financial times. Our financial policies include the following. To the extent feasible, we apply one-time funds to one-time expenditures. BCS does monthly and quarterly reporting to carefully track finances, completes regular updates to 5-year forecasts to plan strategically for the future. We do asset replacement schedules and set aside money each year to pay for future capital expenditures. We strive to balance ongoing revenues with ongoing expenses for divisions whenever possible. And finally, we strive to have all divisions include a contingency of between 10 and 15% of their operating budget for potential unexpected events that may occur throughout the budget year. Throughout this last year, we've been grateful for these policies and the ability to use reserves strategically where needed to cover revenue gaps and unexpected expenditures. This year has been a good example of divisions needing to tap into reserves due to revenue losses directly tied to COVID-19 restrictions on our facilities and programs. We were able to meet at least a 10% contingency for all divisions again in the upcoming budget, and will continue to build up these reserves as needed. These financial policies explain why you see a large beginning balance. These are funds carried over from prior years for contingencies and also include reserves for future asset expenditures. On the expense side, you'll see that the majority of expenses, $12.2 million or 30.7% of the total budget, are for materials and services needed to keep programs running. From parks maintenance supplies to new book purchases to contracted services for entertainment at the county fair. Capital outlay of 17.8% is primarily made up of budgeted costs for the new Oak Lodge and Gladstone Library buildings, and the remainder is a combination of budgeted capital expenses for parks, forestry, property disposition, and library support services. Next slide, please. This slide provides some historical perspective to our numbers, and I'd like to highlight a few of the changes you see here. Overall, we have a status quo budget. However, you will see a decrease in federal, state, and local revenues. This is because the current year amended budget included a one-time CARES dollars that went to support local businesses, and these dollars were significant. The largest increase in expenditures is in capital outlay due to the Oak Lodge and Gladstone Library project. You may note that special payments are decreased by 84%. Again, this is due to the one-time CARES dollars granted to local businesses, which pass through our department. Contingency is increased primarily due to lottery dollars carryover in the economic development program. These one-time dollars will be available for any further need in the business community related to the pandemic. Next slide, please. In this slide, we have the department budget summary by fund. Overall, the BCS budget has decreased by 5.62% from the current year amended budget. This decrease is due to the additional CARES dollars that passed through to businesses in last year's budget. BCS sees no increase in FTE from the amended budget to the current year. General fund support for the department is $2.7 million, just under 7% of our total budget, and the vast majority of these funds are for library shared services, a program that is mandated through an IGA with library cities. Next slide, please. So we'd like to share a few significant changes with you to describe what you might be seeing in the budget documents. First, we have an organizational change. North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District is currently a division of BCS, and as of July 1st will become a separate department. Due to the timing of our budget creation, this change will not be reflected in the budget until fiscal year 22-23, but will be in effect from an operational standpoint at the end of this fiscal year. As mentioned, economic development received one-time money this year from CARES that is not anticipated in future years. The Land Bank Authority program, after being on hold due to COVID-19, was included in our budget to move forward in the coming year, and this is pending board approval. County Fair and Event Center will continue several of the new events added this year and anticipates increased revenue from these events. Library support services will be replacing their firewall software at an estimated cost of $300,000. Next slide, please. Our last significant issues slide has a few more pieces. The Oak Lodge and Gladstone Community Project is on track to make significant headway this year. The current project timeline anticipates we will move through design and permitting phases over the next 8 to 10 months, with construction slated to begin next spring. The budget reflects these project costs in the Oak Lodge and Gladstone Library budgets. The planned revenue bond to support this project will likely not be issued until the end of the fiscal year and is not in the current budget. We will have an updated timeline and cost estimates at the end of the current schematic design phase, and will continue to update the board and the community task forces as this project moves forward. Once we have refined cost estimates and an updated timeline, we will complete a supplemental budget if needed to recognize funds from the revenue bond. County Parks estimated a decrease in revenue of $218,000 this year due to canceled reservations and lack of other fee collection. We do plan to build back our reserves in the coming years. County Parks is in a very tight financial situation. Personnel resources are not keeping up with demand for service and maintenance in our parks, and we recognize this is a significant issue and we'll need to carefully evaluate how to strategically move forward as we go through the coming fiscal years. In 2021, County Parks did implement approved park fee increases in response to increasing costs of business. These fees will also contribute toward ongoing maintenance costs. Parks plans to continue leveraging partnerships to accomplish maintenance and capital projects, including anticipating financial support through state grants and metro bonds. Planned projects include repaving, repairing, and replacing aging facilities and equipment so we can continue to provide safe, healthy outdoor recreational experiences and continue to be a draw for travel and tourism dollars into our communities. Our last change mentioned here is that in 2020, the forestry program was significantly impacted by the devastating wildfires. As we shared earlier, over 450 acres of county forest land was burned, with several plantations being a total loss. Staff estimate the current value of lost timber at approximately $527,000. Although some money may be recouped through select salvage logging, forestry will likely see impacts to revenue in the coming years due to the wildfire losses. This concludes the prepared portion, and so I'd like to ask you what your questions are.
Oh, thank you very much, Sarah. Appreciate it. Very good report. I just want to say, it's not a question I have or anything, but I just want to say I was really pleased and kind of surprised and pleased with the ways that the county fairgrounds, for instance, changed in regard to COVID and the outdoor events that they had there, the drive-through kinds of things, the Halloween scare, all of that type of thing, and that Stone Creek continued to be able to provide for tournaments on a different kind of basis than what they had in the past. So it just shows how innovative people can be when they're, trying to find methodologies. So I thank you and all your staff for that. So I hope you pass that along.
We will. Thank you.
Okay, we have Commissioner Fisher and then Tom Feely.
Yeah, this might be a question for Elizabeth. I'm interested, and I know that this is going to be, it's a question that's kind of throughout the presentation, but
Commissioner Fisher, can I get you to speak?
oh, sure,
Yeah.
thank you. But as Sarah was talking, it made me wonder, so I'll ask my question directly, and then I want to know how it applies to business and community services. So on the revenue side, I'm looking at page 7 of the pie charts. There's a beginning fund balance in revenue of 41.5% of $16 million. And then on the expenditure side, there is a $6 million about reserve and also contingency of $4 million. So there's about 10 million there that is expended from the revenues to be put into savings. And so I'm interested, when Sarah was saying that policies were set some time ago to, because of the nature of BCS, I'm just interested in how these two relate together, the revenue side of where we start and then of what's going in, because it seems that they're very related.
In specifically with
Well, I think
BCS?
we'll see it throughout the budget, so it might be an overall county
So,
policy, but
okay.
it may be specific to BCS.
So I think, yeah, and help me if this is where we're going. So the contingency and reserves that we budget as expenditures, we hope not to touch through the year. So we always want that amount at minimum, to be part of our beginning balance. So it's carried over from the end of one year to the beginning of the next year. So what you're seeing in their beginning balance includes what their contingency and reserve was for last year. And then any unspent dollars that they received, maybe for projects, for community support that they didn't get, that they now need to program. And that's why the contingency and reserve is only 6 million and not near the 16 million, is because they're programming those beginning balances of those dollars that came in at the end of this fiscal year, that they didn't have an opportunity time, or maybe they were slated to be spent in the new year. But you always want the contingency and reserves at the end to be part of that next year's beginning balance. It just leapfrogs. That's your insurance, your backbone to your financials, and your goal is not to dip into those.
Okay, and is this department different in how it addresses this than others based on the nature of its revenue?
That's how throughout any reserve and contingency, you want that amount to be shown in your beginning balance in the following year. So you'll see that in the Clackamas General Fund, you'll see it in DTD, so your goal is that your beginning balance is always going to be greater than the total of your revenue, or your reserve and your contingency.
So this is countywide policy, not specific to BCS?
It's practice.
Okay,
And
that was my question, because I wasn't
Although
quite sure.
They do have very strong financial policies. I remember my first year in the budget committee, and I was impressed with that.
Tom, could you speak closer to your
Oh,
microphone,
sorry.
please?
Yeah, I'll just,
Thank you.
My second question, and you somewhat addressed it, I was interested in the targets for the metrics. And under forestry, it says that the 2021 target from net earned from timber sales was 280,000, yet the projected performance is 645,000, and then our target for this budget goes back to the 280,000. And you'd mentioned that 450 acres were burned, and we lost 527,000 in revenue because of the burn. Could you reconcile all of that for me and connect those two and give me a bigger picture of what we're wanting our goals to be and how those are affected by the wildfires?
Definitely, and I think Allegra can speak to that in terms of some of the more specifics.
Yes, Allegra Wilhite, Deputy Director with Business and Community Services. Commissioner Fisher, excellent question. So with our performance measures, we try to identify what we think is achievable, but also a little bit of a stretch. And you can imagine anticipating what timber revenues are going to be in any given year is certainly a challenge because we don't know what prices are going to be. We don't know what the cost will be to actually do that harvest. So the $280,000 represents our best guess at what we would receive in terms of net income. Now, that $280,000 is actually one timber harvest split over multiple years because we do not do a timber harvest every single year. So we had a timber harvest last year that actually came in at $1 million net, which means we achieved more than we thought we would for this upcoming year. That money carried forward, which gives us the $500,000. And then, as you correctly alluded to, we did some salvage logging, which got us up to the $645,000, thankfully. Now, the piece in terms of the future, at the $280,000 in terms of a target, we left that there because that's our best guess at this time. The markets have been volatile in terms of, well, even being able to actually do the logging because of how difficult it has been sometimes to find contractors to get the work done. It's been a difficult year. So we chose to go ahead and leave the target the same. It may be that next year we'll hit that. It may be that we might not be able to. It's hard to say. So this is a difficult measure to anticipate in the long term. And when we say that we believe forestry revenues will be impacted in the long term, that's because that stock that maybe was planned out for 5 years from now to be doing the harvesting. So we'll absolutely be keeping a close eye on it. And I do want to give a plug for our reserve policy for forestry. We budget a substantial reserve there just in case it's not financially feasible to make a harvest in a given year. So I think we will be okay. We just have to stay aware of it in the long term. But yes, excellent point. I can see why that would be confusing with the numbers the way that they are. Thank you.
And may I add, I do want to point out that the Finance Department, we are doing, we're updating all of our financial policies, and the Budget Committee, we shared with them in February, I believe, our updated reserve and contingency policy. And so that has now been through the policy committee that we have here at the county, and it's now with our union, which is the next step. And then following that, we'll bring it to the Board of County Commissioners. And so that'll address what you're asking as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So Mr. Feely and then Commissioner Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question on your significant changes, 2020 to 2021 of the Departmental Reorganization. Can you just give me the quick explanation of what it does, why you're doing it, and does it cost money, does it save money, is it neutral?
Certainly. Thanks for that question. I'll start it, and then Allegra, if you have anything you'd like to add, please do. So as I understand it, there's been a long-running conversation in terms of if it would make the most sense for North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District to be its own department. And so this past year, it was decided that the timing was right to do that. They are a special, their own district with their own permanent tax rate, and they have a complex business model that really justifies them being their own department with a director directly reporting to Administrator Schmidt. So that decision was done several months ago, and then we're planning to move forward. We do have a centralized allocation model for administrative support within the department. And so with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District becoming its own department, it does remove revenue from the business and community services, what we call kind of our central administration allocation. And that's around $400,000 that comes out of our budget, and it's cost savings to NCPRD that they'll be able to utilize for other administrative purposes as they reestablish themselves as their own department. Does that get at what you're looking for?
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I have a question about timber dollars. You know, I am
you-
aware that we harvest our.
Commissioner,
can you hear
can
me?
you- yeah.
I am aware that we harvest our own timber, and generally it goes to fund county parks, if I'm not mistaken. What do you do? I'm assuming you're also the repository for O&C dollars. Where is that accounted for in this budget?
Yes. Do you have that detail, Allegra?
I don't have that
Okay.
detail, but we could pull Tracy
Yeah.
in for the ONC if you'd like.
We could certainly, Tracy Grambush, our financial analyst, could perhaps provide a bit more information. And we have been coming back into that association, and so I'm not sure what our past practice has been.
I can answer that. It does not go to this department. It goes to the county general fund.
Okay, So we manage it directly as administration. It's not part of the, that's what I was just trying to
Okay.
figure where this money went. It's not part of our forestry harvest piece. It's
That is correct.
dollars.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. Elizabeth or Sandra, do you know offhand?
I don't, but we can research.
We'll confirm that. I'm pretty sure, though, I'm sorry, it does not go directly to your department budget. It comes to the county general fund, and then we distribute it from there.
That makes
Okay.
sense. Okay, thank
And
you.
and it's irregular. It depends, too, on what happens with those counties. And we are part of that, and we do get a distribution. So it would be good to know where that lands. Thank you. Not in this.
Mr. Feely, you still have your card up. Did you wish to
no, I'm
comment again,
sorry.
or?
Card down.
Okay, and Commissioner Schrader? I see no other cards up nor lights on. And so thank you, Sarah and staff, very much. We appreciate your comments. We are actually running a little bit ahead of time, although not a lot, but a few minutes. We are scheduled for a break at this point in time to last until 10:25. But I also see that our next presenters are in the room. So I would entertain a thought of perhaps reconvening at 10:15 instead of 10:25, if that works
sounds
for
great.
everyone. All right, fine, we'll do that. We're in recess until 10:15. Thank you.